The master then followed Zishi's parents into the ward to see the child. After examining Zishai, he told the parents, "This child has indeed been targeted by something malevolent and used as a substitute. His soul is no longer complete, but strangely, even though it has been nearly 2 days, he is still holding on to a single breath and hasn't passed away." He then asked Zishi's parents, "Is there anything the child is carrying or wearing, such as an amulet or an object blessed by an elder from the family's hometown?" The parents immediately informed the master that there was. When the child was born, his grandmother had obtained a longevity lock for him from a temple in Yuxi to bless him with safety. The child had always worn it on his left wrist, and he had brought it with him when they came to handle the funeral affairs for the great-grandmother. However, since he was pulled out of the water, the longevity lock on his left wrist was missing. After hearing this, the master shook his head again and said, "No, something's not right here. If there was indeed some protective object that had shielded the child from disaster, he should have been fine soon after being rescued and brought to the hospital. The fact that he's been in a coma for so long with no signs of improvement and in such a dangerous condition means that he could die any moment." Upon hearing that their child could die any moment, Zishi's mother burst into tears. His father, also on the verge of tears, pleaded with the master, "Master, you have to think of something. Please, you have to save him." The master asked the couple to calm down and said, "Since he's still in a coma, it means there's still a way. Let's go to the pond right now and see what we can do." The parents immediately took the master to the pond, leaving Zishi's aunt at the hospital to keep watch over him. After examining the pond, the master kept shaking his head and said, "This is very complicated. It seems that some kind of malevolent force has interfered with the protective object. The fact that the child is still holding onto his last breath is already a miracle. Otherwise, he would have died already." However, the master said, "To deal with this, we need to call the child's soul back. But all I can do is perform the ritual. Whether the soul returns or not depends on the child's own fortune. I'll do everything I can. If it doesn't work, you should quickly find someone else who can help." He added, but Zishi's parents couldn't find a more capable master, so they pleaded with him, "Please, we beg of you." The master said he needed to prepare some items to perform the ritual by the pond, and then return to the ward to continue the treatment. Zishi's mother immediately returned to the hospital to stay with her son, while his father stayed at the pond with the master. Later, Zishi's father recounted to him that he didn't see anything particularly extraordinary about the items the master prepared, which were just some incense and joss paper. The master chanted and muttered, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Afterward, the father secretly whispered to Zishi's aunt, asking if she could help find someone else, as he was unsure if the master could really help. The aunt was also very anxious but didn't know any other masters. During Zishi's hospital stay, his parents hadn't slept for days. That night, fearing that his wife, who hadn't rested for several days, would collapse from exhaustion, Zishi's father asked her to go back to his aunt's house to rest for the night and come back to relieve him the next day. So the mother went home with the aunt, still preoccupied with finding another master to help her son. The aunt said she was already looking for someone and asking around. That night, Zishi's mother was so exhausted that she quickly fell asleep on the edge of the bed. In her dream, she was searching for her son in the village, but couldn't find him no matter how hard she looked. Suddenly, it occurred to her that her son might have fallen into the pond at the village entrance. She rushed to the pond, only to find that there was no pond there in the dream. Instead, it was an empty lot where a group of children were playing. These children looked strange. They were all wet and dirty, covered in mud and weeds, and their bodies were pale and bloated from being soaked in water. The mother suddenly recognized one of the children. Upon closer inspection, the child was wearing the same clothes as Zishai, but his face was swollen from being in the water. But in her dream, she was certain that it was her son, Zishai. She called out his name desperately, but Zishai seemed not to hear her and continued playing with the other children. As they played, they slowly moved away from the village entrance, not looking back. The mother in the dream felt totally desperate, as if this time, if she didn't bring her son back, she would never find him again. She shouted his name over and over, trying to chase after him, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't catch up to him. He remained just out of reach, and she couldn't close the distance between them. At that moment, the mother noticed that her son seemed to have heard her crying, and suddenly turned his head to look at her. She saw his face was pale and filled with panic, and despite the dirt on his face, she could see tears streaming down. It seemed like he wanted to run back to her, but his hands were held by two kids beside him. He tried to break free but couldn't, and the children dragged him further away. The mother felt totally helpless and desperate, with no way to reach her son. Then, she suddenly noticed someone approaching the children from a distance at the village entrance. From afar, she couldn't see who it was, but as the figure came closer, she realized it was an old woman with bound feet, moving slowly. It was none other than Zishi's recently deceased great-grandmother. The old woman approached the children and, after saying something to them, took out some candy and handed it to the children. With the candy in their hands, the children let go of Zishai and ran off happily, eating the candy as they went. The great-grandmother then took Zishi's hand gently, wiped the tears and mud from his face, and led him back to his mother. She handed the child to his mother without a word, then turned and slowly walked back in the direction the children had gone. The mother wanted to say something to the great-grandmother, but she was abruptly awakened by her aunt's voice. Startled by the ringing phone, and fearing the worst for her son, she was terrified. The voice on the other end of the line said, "The child's condition has improved. He has woken up. Don't be afraid." The mother rushed to answer the phone, and it was Zishi's father on the line, saying, "The child has just woken up. The doctor said he is out of danger." Relieved and overjoyed, the mother and her aunt hurried to the hospital in the middle of the night. Upon arriving, they learned that the child was indeed out of danger, and with proper rest and care, should recover fully. Later, when they asked the father about the master's visit, he said that the master had come to the ward and performed some rituals to call the child's soul back, but he couldn't be sure if it would work. He had suggested finding someone else if possible. The mother immediately shared her dream with Zishi's father and her aunt. The family believed that, regardless of the circumstances, Zishi's recovery was nothing short of a miracle. The hospital's efforts were undoubtedly crucial, but they also chose to believe that the master's rituals, the lost longevity lock, and the dream in which the great-grandmother rescued Zishai from the children and handed him back to his mother, all played a significant role in his miraculous recovery. The story ends here. Zishai himself has no memory of the incident from his childhood and can't recall what his great-grandmother looked like. However, he is willing to believe that in some way, his deceased elders may have been watching over him all along.